Suprabhatam, I think this was not really required by it, but for some reason you need a formal introduction. But I think the relationship that has grown in the last 3-4 days has transcended the borders of formalism, because in the Bharatiya Bhumi, in the Bharatiya Satya, it is actually heart to heart. I have a small presentation today on the topic called the Vastu Tatha Sthapatyakala. So if we can switch over, so that is the presentation. This is one area of Bharatiya Gyan Pranali, which is Indian architectural knowledge systems. And I think within a short time, with my little capacity and small understanding, which I have gathered in the last 25 to 30 years, as a student of architecture and planning, maybe I'll share a few of the things. Of many domains of Indian knowledge system, Vastukala, which is the science of built environment, and Sthapatyakala, which is the science of construction and installation. And then we also have allied kalas like Nandan Kala, the science of Indian aesthetics. And then we have many other things which surrounds it from all around, which is Arthashastra, which is the Indian concept of economics, Parivesh Vidya, the Indian idea of environmental sciences, and the ecological sciences, and finally cosmology, which is Khagol Vigyan, and the whole of cosmic and macrocosmic sciences. I don't know how to start, but I'll just quote a small sutra by Mahayogeshwar Gorakshanathji, and he says like this. I'll try. I'm not good at Sanskrit, but I've picked up a bit of it. It goes like this. It says, Antar Shunna Bahi Shunna Shunna Kumbha Ibambare, and Antapurna Bahir Purna Purna Kumbha Ivarnave, which says like if this is a kumbha, a container, then either it is empty inside and empty outside, and the connection between the inside and the outside is like a huge space, an eternal space, which in Indian knowledge system we call Chidakasha. That means a space of consciousness. Or it could be filled up with water, which is like water inside and water outside, which is like if you put a pitcher in a huge ocean with waves, so there's water inside and water outside, it looks like Ivarnave. So there are two ways of looking at the ultimate reality, which is either it is floating in free space in Chidakash, or it's floating in filled up space, which is Chit Shamudra. So it is up to you the way you look at it. You look at space void inside, space void outside, or you look at in the way that it's filled up with consciousness inside and filled up with consciousness outside. So in other words, it gives an idea of consciousness both as space and also as a vibrant principle. So that brings us to two fundamental principles of Indian knowledge systems. One is Akasha, which is space itself, and one is Prana, which is the vibration of consciousness. So all that we see in the words of one of the greatest philosophers ever born in the history of humankind, that is Maharshi Kapila. So everyone from Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha, to Swami Vivekananda, and everyone in the West, from Plato to the Alexandrian school of philosophy, to Plotinus, Spinoza, and others, have been influenced by Kapila. And Kapila says this entire universe is a combination of the two factors, which is kshetra, which is the container, and the kshetragya, which is something which is contained inside. So the kshetra is the akash, and the kshetragya is the prana, the subtle vibrations. So Maharshi Kapila denominates the entire composition of the universe as a latent composition between prana and akasha. I'll just spend a minute over it. Just imagine a student has come to IIT Kharagpur. I am a student of IIT Kharagpur. And IIT Kharagpur looks alien to me. I mean, I don't know the hostels, and somebody is saying they'll transfer you from TGH to SAM. So there's a big question mark there. And Richadi is sometimes looking at you, sometimes she's thinking about something else. And then you approach me, I don't have a clear answer. Things like that. So what happens, there is an amplitude, there's a huge gap between prana and akasha. That means your urges and the space, which is IIT Kharagpur. But then one day, Richadi says, okay, let me have a talk with the guest house person. Let me have a talk with the food person. Let me see that you get some hot soup in the evening and you feel comfortable. So the amplitude reduces between prana and akasha, between IIT Kharagpur, which is prana, and you as a container, because you are holding the experience called IIT Kharagpur. So akasha is holding the experience called prana. So the amplitude between prana and akasha reduces. And then one day happens that you become ingrained in the ethos of IIT Kharagpur, and you develop a relationship. Maybe you're invited one day as a speaker or as an expert, and somebody says, "Ab to aaye the," as an FDP participants. So why don't you come this time as an FDP speaker? And you feel elated. So that means your relationship between IIT Kharagpur and yourself, it becomes lesser. It becomes smaller and smaller. That means the amplitude, like a pendulum. It's like a pendulum. So at the lower phase of the pendulum, the distance between the swing, which is the kinetic energy, is very large. But as you go up in the pendulum, in the triangle, the distance between the swing reduces and reduces. And until and unless you reach the apex of the pendulum, where there's hardly any distance between the left and the right, between prana and akasha, and you are almost IIT Kharagpur at that point. Everything that happens to your life, every achievement that you do, every service that you render, whether it's IIT Kharagpur or Bharatvarsh, you are that object itself. There's a convergence between the two. I'll give you one example at this point. One day, Miss Margaret Noble, who was known as Sister Nivedita, I'm sure you've heard about her, asked Swami Vivekananda, "Swamiji, how can I serve you? How can I serve you?" Swamiji said, "You don't have to serve me. I don't have any identity. Serve Bharatvarsha, serve India. In that sense, you serve me." So Nivedita just looked at Swami Vivekananda, and it took about 10 years for her to understand that Swami Vivekananda was personified Bharatvarsha. He represents the arjas and the sarjas of Bharatvarsha. That means Swamiji had reached a point where there is no difference between the object and the subject. Swamiji himself, his every movement, someone like Sri Aurobindo, someone like Ramana Maharshi, someone like Gautama Buddha, someone like Adi Shankaracharya, someone like Acharya Ramanujam, they represent Bharatvarsha. They are Bharatvarsha. So when you look at them, when you look at these great preachers of humanity, you look at India, you look at itself. So India is not a geographical identity. India is not a political economic space. It represents a way of life. So the amplitude between the prana and the akasha, between the kshetragya and the kshetra, diminishes to zero, and the kinetic energy, that means the gap between the two extremes, finally collapses and it becomes one. So from kinetic energy, you move to potential energy. You reach omnipotence. You reach omnipotence. That is why Swamiji said, every soul is potentially divine, but we are not aware of it. The whole goal is to make it kinetic, so that one day you reach and understand there is something inside you which is potentially divine, and you become one with that. Yesterday, Swami Vedhananda ji was speaking whether you take Advaitavad, whether you take Visheshtadvaitavad, or you take the path of Sankhya, or you take the Bhakti, it doesn't matter. You just take any one of the rivers based on your impression, your sanskara. And the Gita says, Je jathamang prapaddante tangsthaiva bhajamaham. mama bhartanubante partha manushya sarvashya, which means there's only one ocean, there's a one and only ocean, but the paths could be different in different times and space. So there are different ways to reach that one truth. Whether you are doing it through physics, or you are doing it through meditation, or you are doing it through psychology, but you reach that one truth. So if you can reach that one truth in different space and time by using different paths, that is something what you call science, Jnana Vijnana Yoga. The definition of science is a truth which can be approached by different means and contents and applications in different space and time contexts. So a person who is a true scientist will never say that my path is the only path and other paths are not true. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, there's a beautiful allegory. Sri Ramakrishna says, everybody wants to say that my watch is giving the right time. I mean, I say, you say, she says. But time and again, we have to tune the watch with the sun. The sun is absolute, which is beyond all watches. So different prophets, different avatars, different Vadas has talked about the same truth, but they all have to, the personified gods, the avatars and the prophets and the Shastras, they all have to tune it to the impersonal, the transcendental. So the complete truth is a combination of the personal smriti and the impersonal, which is sruti. So our Indian knowledge system is a combination of space and time, which is smriti, and beyond space and time, which is sruti, which is sanatana. So that's why the Vedas, they transcend even the avatars, even the great prophets. They remain there. The Vedas are not books. At certain point of history, the tattva of Agni became the Rig Veda, and the tattva of Vayu became the Jajur Veda, and the tattva of Surya became the Sam Veda, and the tattva of Soma, Amrita, became the Atharva Veda. But finally, these tattvas are the eternal principles. So coming to today's topic, as you approach that one truth via various paths, one path, just one path, very humbly, just one path is Vastukala. It's architectural sciences. It is just one of many. It is just one of many.